Hi, my name is Dr. Marcia and I would like to share with you part 2 of my reflection of being a black woman senior lecturer. Now this is week 9 of this journey, and I've decided to share with you how I'm feeling because, as always, I've never been the sort of person who follows the traditional conventions, whether that's in learning, whether that's in my place of work. I've always tried to be innovative and creative. So I'm lecturing on the professional psychosocial practice module, and I decided to bring the last 8 weeks to life for my students. And I did that by focusing on autoethnography. Now, autoethnography is quite a new concept and methodology. If we break the word up, graphy refers to describing or being analytical. Auto incorporates the personal, the I, me, and also the ethno refers to the cultural experience. So autoethnography, to me, seems to be a perfect fit in bringing to life the theories of intersectionality, the organisation in the mind, the emotional labour, etc., into practice. I wanted to do it in a creative way that got my students to be part of this particular learning process, because in the next month or so they will be delivering or submitting an assignment which involves them being reflective in their voluntary placements. So I decided to introduce them to the concept of autoethnography because it's not a widely known concept or method. I came across it because during my journey as a practitioner researcher, when I was actually doing my own doctorate, I realised that, I developed a third voice in which I refer to it in my thesis. A third voice through poetry, which I was able to use as a means to express the anxieties, the pain, the concerns, the feelings that I was encountering when I was actually collating my data and analysing it. If you want to know more information about that, then you would have to read my book, which is here, Black Women Employees, the Intersectionality of Gender and Race. But also, if you're into reading academic journals, I have an article entitled The Reflections of a Black Woman Practitioner Researcher in the Qualitative Research in Psychology journal, in which I actually use autoethnography to look at what it was like to be a black woman practitioner researcher during my PhD. So there you actually get to see how I was applying the concept and using it to analyse what was going on, incorporating my participants' narrative, as well as my journal extract, and a poem which I wrote as a result of interviewing a particular participant. So in that article, it actually brings together how I was actually using autoethnography at that particular time. Now that's what I wanted my students to experience today, how they can actually bring to life a reflective piece of work that's spontaneous, that is, takes place in that time, and for them to actually journey what am I observing? They are students, and therefore they are part of a subculture. I'm a lecturer. I want them to experience what it was like to be observant in their particular subculture, how they were feeling, what their experiences were, what past experiences, values, beliefs were they bringing into that observational place, and then actually think about how that was then affecting the way in which they were writing and describing and analysing what was going on around them. It was a real powerful session, and you could actually see that they were actually getting deeper into how they were feeling about the situation, about being a student. But you know why I decided to share this session with you as part of my reflection was because when I was giving an example to them of what I wanted to get from them, I always use personal experiences, and I love the feeling of being able to use my own teaching material from my own research. That in itself is very powerful because I don't have to rely on academics and scholars from 50, 60, 100 years ago. I can actually rely on my own contemporary research of being an intersectional subject within different locations. So I decided to ask them, as in asking myself when I was reflecting as part of this subculture, because I am part of their learning journey, what makes me a lecturer? What makes me a good lecturer or a bad lecturer? What do I bring to lecturing? And when I was asking myself those questions as part of this exercise, it made me think, what do I bring to lecturing? What makes me a lecturer? Now, if I was to say, well, I follow the traditional conventions, would that actually mean I was being true to myself? Well, as I started off saying, I don't follow the traditional conventions, hence the reason why my lectures are interactive. But they're still lectures. But I make sure that I don't lose my students during that 2 hours, because they're part of that journey.